There are a lot of studies on it. It's certainly driven by an increase in finding a solution for the increased rates of ADHD and autism. I think it's really important here to qualify or quantify what we're talking about with frequent Tylenol use. And most of the studies are looking at measured as more than 28 days over the course of your pregnancy. So that is a lot of Tylenol use. Yeah. We're not talking about you have a high fever and you take it for a day or two. This is kind of more long-term use. There is a correlation between Tylenol use and these disorders in children. And I'll probably lose listeners if I go too deeply, but correlation is not causation. Those are two separate things. And while there's a lot of literature out there, a lot of clinical studies, I would argue that the best ones look at sibling analysis. So they compare a mother who had frequent use during one pregnancy and not the next. And that's the best way to kind of look at this. And in those studies, there was no findings of increased risks. And there have been several. There was a $2.5 million children study in Sweden, as well as a more recent one out of Japan. Unfortunately, randomized trials are difficult to do. There's just too many variables. But the sibling analysis is probably the best we have.
So, Anne, when I think about the companies that are affected, certainly Kenvue, which owns the Tylenol brand, is directly affected. And we saw the stock plunge yesterday. It's recovered a bit today, up about 3.2%. But Tylenol's generic name is acetaminophen, and there are many other companies that make acetaminophen as well. Are we seeing them impacted in any way?
This is, even for Kenvue, this is maybe a high single-digit portion of sales, and that's Tylenol overall. So you assume that the pregnant population is a much smaller percentage of those sales. And I'd argue even, before all of this, a lot of physicians, certainly mine, when I was pregnant, recommended only taking Tylenol when you have one of those, high fevers. So I wouldn't expect it to truly be a material impact to any of these companies.
Is there anything else out there that is at risk here? I mean, from just the FDA, your coverage here, because I know there's a lot of uncertainty about which drugs are, kind of favored by this administration and which ones aren't. Are you seeing that in your coverage of your companies?
Well, for pregnancy in particular, I'd say there are no favored drugs. You certainly were never suggested to take aspirin, and Tylenol was one of the few things that was considered okay. Mm-hmm. But overall, anytime you get a lot of media attention on any drug, from politics or anything else, it's typically not a great thing for the companies, but I think it does tend to even out as it passes.
You are our senior equity analyst for biopharmaceuticals. When the Secretary of Health, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., speaks, does he tend to move companies in your universe?
I would argue yes. For better or for worse, I'd say they definitely move, but I would say that they go back to a steady state.